Everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar, Take the Pain Out of ERP Buying, Stay on Track, on Budget, and Aligned. My name is Katie. I will be the facilitator today, so if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will get to questions at the end. The session will be recorded and posted on our blog, as well as shared with you next week. But I'm excited to dive into today's session. I am joined by two experts here at Encore. I have Alfred Salvaraja, Enterprise Account Executive, as well as Tina Teresa, the Strategic Partner and Alliance Manager. They both bring years of experience and have a vast range of experience in the Microsoft ecosystem, but I will let them introduce themselves. So Tina, why don't you kick it off?
Thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. I'm Tina Teresa. I'm the Strategic Partner and Alliance Manager here at Encore. I've spent the last decade working within the Microsoft ecosystem, managing partnerships for ISVs and VARs and clients across the industry, such as retail, hospitality, manufacturing, and pretty much everything in between. I work closely with our partners, our sales team, and engage directly with clients to ensure we're not just selling software, we're delivering solutions that drive growth, scale with your business, and create lasting value. Alfred.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tina. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. My name is Alfred Salvaraja. As Katie said, I'm an enterprise account executive here on the sales team at Encore. Much like Tina, I've also spent close to about a decade in the Dynamics ecosystem, and really my focus on a day-to-day basis is working with customers, defining their requirements, understanding what they desire out of an ERP implementation, and just generally their technology initiatives. I like to think of myself as sort of the custodian of the impact that customers want to drive, and so part of my day-to-day work is to work with our implementation teams to ensure that the main thing remains the main thing as we are doing these implementations. Plus, I also help customers sort of cut through the noise. You know, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to vendors and so many other things related to choosing an ERP. And so I try to help sort of cut through the noise and really guide and help organizations land on a platform that fits not only what they are doing today, but for the future. So, and again, I've also worked in multiple industries throughout my career. So really excited to share some of my insights that I've learned in helping some customers pick an ERP, but also implement one. So happy to be here today with you.
All right, thank you both. So we have lots to cover today. So to kick things off, I'd like to start with kind of a bigger picture question, which is, what's a common challenge businesses face when selecting an ERP system? Alfred, from your experience, what do you see that might tend to trip up some organizations in those beginning stages?
Oh, where do I start? You know, organizations have a number of different challenges they face. One of the horror stories I hear often about is really, we've implemented this ERP, but we're not getting the outcomes that we desired, you know. And this is where organizations sometimes let features lead instead of outcomes. So one of the things that I always try to focus on is really what is the end goal with the ERP, right? What is the end goal? And ERP is really a means to an end, right? It's not the end in itself, although it many times can feel so. So really, I think one of the areas that I encourage organizations to spend a lot more time on is defining KPIs, defining targets, really thinking about their future state versus focusing on features and functionality that's available in systems, right? I have seen it happen quite often that organizations will be quick to jump on a call with a vendor to look at a demonstration, for example. So I often say, you know, the biggest challenge isn't picking between vendors, it's really picking without clarity. You know, I have seen organizations suffer through sitting through demonstrations and still not being able to make a decision as to what is the right solution. So really leading with outcomes and not features is something that I see a lot, and really encourage people to sort of think about what does this mean long term for us, and what are the outcomes, and sort of defining success. That's one of the key things that that I often encourage organizations to focus on. Um, Plus also balancing short-term needs and long-term strategy. Organizations are very quick to solve the current pain points that they're experiencing, but oftentimes you really need to keep a long-term mindset when you are investing in things like an ERP, which is really mission critical, probably one of the larger investments an organization will make in a 10 to 15 year span. So again, keeping that in mind is quite important, and one of the common challenges that I see.
That's great. That's a great perspective on those challenges, and how to think long term instead of just what's happening today. So in a scenario where maybe they get it wrong at that beginning stage, what's the impact? What's the hidden cost or of getting of missing one of those steps, or not getting it quite right in the beginning?
Yeah, quite a bit of hidden costs. Obviously, the not so hidden or the direct cost is really all of the compounding rework costs that have to happen. You spend 12 months in an implementation, it hasn't gone well, and now you have to spend all of that money again, doing all of the same activities for the next 6 to 12 months, implementing either something new or sort of pivoting on an ERP strategy, right? Whether that's picking a different platform or even picking a different vendor. So that's the direct cost, but the hidden costs are, when you think about staff morale, when it comes to these implementations, they can be really quite tough to do and quite frustrating. And you don't want to really be on the bad side of a failed ERP implementation. I have seen staff actually leaving organizations at times because it's quite stressful and quite frustrating. So that's a huge part that often is underestimated in many ways, but that's really one of those hidden costs in re-looking at staff and them having to go through that process all over again. But like I said, it's really those costs around having to do your data migration again, which really we spend a lot of time doing and helping customers. All of that work really has to be done again. So quite a significant set of direct costs, but also hidden costs. And then we also have to talk about the missed opportunity, right? Folks could have improved their processes 12 months ago versus having to do it all over again. So what you could have done in the first 12 months, you now have to wait another 12 months to see those opportunities. So again, lots of missed opportunities and successes that organizations could have tasted.
There's definitely a lot that can be missed, but I think, and that's where somebody like Encore would come in and help you along the way with kind of directing against those scenarios that could turn into big problems down the road. So shifting kind of into how businesses can set themselves up for success, and how a partner like Encore, a Microsoft partner, can guide them along that path. So Tina, from your perspective, how does having a Microsoft partner help avoid a wrong fit ERP?
Working with the right Microsoft partner is like having a trusted guide through the ERP journey. You have to do your own research. That's important, but it's only going to take you so far. Most organizations replace their ERP systems maybe once every 7 to 10 years. A Microsoft partner, on the other hand, does hundreds of these projects every year, and that experience really matters. Partners know what works and what doesn't, because they've seen it across all industries. They're going to help map your processes to best practices rather than replacing or replicating, broken workflows. So oftentimes, a client's going to look at, oh, well, this is how we've always done things. We just want to do it the same way in a new system. And that, if you don't take the time to really figure out where you really want to go, then you're going to end up just replicating the things that don't work, and then blame it on the ERP, when in actuality that was your time to go ahead and take a look and see what could be improved upon with best practices, and a partner is really going to help you do that. Something that's really stands out for me in the industry is that there are partners out there that are just Business Central partners. They're very, very good at what they do. But if you are not sure as a client if you're going to go down the Business Central road or if you're going to go down the F&O or FSCM road. And you just go down the road and say, hey, I'm going to start taking a look at Business Central. And then as you go through that discovery, you find out that our growth plan really, and our revenue, we really fit into a F&O environment. If you've started with a BC partner, now you have to go out and look for another partner that really focuses and specializes and can help you do that journey and requirements analysis in the F&O world. And what that really does is it makes you have to start over. So you're starting over with a new partner, getting to know the people all over again, going through a new discovery, new timelines, and additional cost because you have lost momentum. You've duplicated a lot of your efforts and your requirements processes, and your stakeholders are frustrated. So you want to, if you can, go with a partner that has both Business Central and F&O specialties, so they can take you either way. They can go through that requirements analysis process and help you make the determination of which direction to go. And with Encore, with our 35 years of experience in both BC and F&O, I think that that's one of the differentiators for Encore that can help.
Thanks, Tina. Before I get into the next question, I actually want to go off of that for yourself, Alfred. Have you seen that where somebody's, come to us and they're like, Business Central's are the ERP for us, and you have to step in and give that expert advice and say, what, I think F&O might actually be the better option. Has that happened for you?
More times than I care to admit and count, to be honest. Yes, we've had several situations where customers do come to us having done their research and feel like this is the right solution, but we very soon come to realize that that's not the right solution, that we need to take them on a different path. So we see that all the time. And you're right, Tina. I think one of the key things as part of the selection of an ERP is really the partner. And this is something that I guide customers is really pick a partner who's long-term minded, because ERP implementations and related technologies are really long-term solutions that you have to live with for many years to come. And the whole purpose of these solutions is really to defragment processes, right? Because you have siloed processes and you're trying to bring them together. And a partner who has visibility across multiple departments, whether that's sales or finance and operations, having one partner to help bridge that automation is really the best way to go, versus picking a CRM that's with one partner, for example, or an ERP with another partner. It doesn't quite get you the end state that most organizations desire. So really, preferably picking a partner with a broad set of capabilities almost always has a positive impact and helps organizations achieve those goals they crave for. So.
That's great. Thank you both. So now kind of talking about fragmented systems, I want to talk a little bit about misalignment and successful projects usually start earlier than thinking about what ERP specifically they're going to pick. So looking at kind of that leadership alignment and defining success before they even look at which ERP they might implement. Alfred, can you share a little bit about an example of a team that really got it right? They had all the right people involved from the start. What was different? Who was involved? How did that process look?
Yeah, one of the projects and teams that comes to mind is a very large manufacturer that we implemented ERP for, specifically F&O. And one of the key things that they did refreshingly different is really, before they reached out to us, they had gone through an exercise in documenting their requirements, but also not only their current state requirements, but their future state requirements. They really thought through, how do our processes work today, but also how do we want it to work in the future? They didn't really just automate the current situation, right? You don't want to scale inefficiencies, right? So that's something that they refreshingly spent a lot of time. And this is where the leadership really was committed to ensuring that before they reached out to vendors and avoid this, let's say, vendor theater, they were really running the show versus letting vendors run the show. And that they defined the not only the process and the requirements very well, but what is the decision criteria, for example. What is really important for them when they look at a system, but also a partner really defining, what are the top 5 factors that are really important to us, so then they can have a much more scientific scoring and decision. So that's one of the things that we working with that team was they had a very, very nicely documented and articulated process of their requirements and how they were going to make the decision, which helped us as a vendor, but also certainly them as well. Secondly is around governance. They had very, very clearly articulated the right owners of processes, who is going to own the outcomes internally. So they published, a very good document around roles and responsibilities in the organization of people and what those people were going to do in the context of this ERP implementation, which really helped them make much better decisions on what requirements should get implemented and what are the strategic objectives and impact that the organization wants to see. And the adverse effect of that is lots of people not knowing what's most important to the organization, and then you have things like scope creep that happens once the project has begun. So yeah, these are sort of a couple of really, really nice things that I've seen one of our customers do.
So I want to build on that a little bit. So why is it important to have, different departments at a company aligned before starting that search?
Yeah, like I said, just building on the scope creep aspect, again, lots of horror stories in the ecosystem, ERP ecosystem, generally speaking, is we've implemented this project, but 8 months down the line, there are some requirements that were not captured, right? So I'm sure we've all heard this, Tina, Katie, you've heard this all the time, is this scope creep aspect where the budget keeps inflating and organizations don't see the impact. Secondly, ERP is all about bringing an organization's processes together. You don't want to optimize how a sales team does their sales quotes and orders only for the operations team not to be able to fulfill those orders, right? You don't want to scale those bottlenecks. And that's why it's so important for companies to be aligned right from the get-go as to what's important for us, how our processes going to work together, and documenting that and making sure vendors understand that very clearly. So that's, in my opinion, what I have seen working with a number of different organizations.
So it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity, and it should be an opportunity with the new ERP system to kind of reimagine your processes, and it serves as a moment in time to think about that. But I know with that comes managing those changes, which could be a significant shift in processes for a lot of, and it touches a lot of different departments. Tina, what role does change management play when looking for a new ERP?
Yeah, change management is a critical component to the ERP success, because implementing a new system isn't just a technology upgrade. It's truly a business transformation that your entire organization needs to kind of get on board with. So you want your organization to embrace those new processes. And, if you do change management right, it's going to ensure that your employees understand why. The why, right? The why is so important. Why are we making this change? What does this mean for me? How is this going to help me do my job? That's really important. And for them to understand what benefit it brings and how it impacts their role, enables them to embrace the change. And that just makes that whole transition go smoother. Good change managers help secure executive sponsorships and communicate that new vision, which is essential for overcoming cultural and operational inertia. And then training and post-go-live support. Managing expectations and scope are all going to reduce the resistance to change and alleviate the anxiety that often comes with that change. So I think it's change management is truly a critical component here. And I think it's something that's overlooked. You know, sometimes it's a couple of people who are making a decision, they roll it out, and the whole organization doesn't understand why we're doing this. So that, I think, is a really important part of the process.
Absolutely. I mean, in ERP projects inherently are complex and frustrating most of the time, right? Like that's the reality. And oftentimes we will get questions from users saying, why am I doing this? I have a day job. Why am I doing this? And this just goes back to, again, measuring what success looks like and being able to tell people this is what we are driving to, and this is what we know that it's difficult today, but this is the future state, and this is how your life will be better, right? And constantly keeping those communication channels open with users, letting them know what's coming down the line and how it's going to impact, often sort of warms them up or softens that blow of all that hard work that they need to get systems implemented. So yeah,
And
and like you
it's
said,
human
Tina,
nature. That's human
indeed.
nature to resist that change when you're doing the same thing for any period of time. Now I need to make a change. People are resistant. So every way that you can support making that change easier will have a much better end result.
Absolutely.
Great. The next thing I want to talk about here, and Alfred, you brought it up earlier, just thinking about ERP buying as being a long-term decision, which it is. And it's not just about solving the problems that they're facing today. It's about, setting up your business for the future. So I want to go into what happens when a company might not be thinking long-term. They're thinking about, how do I solve the problem in front of me right now? Alfred, what's a risk of picking a system that only solves today's problems?
Well, there's a whole bunch of risks, you talk about costs that will incur. Usually the adverse effects of not having a long-term approach is you implement a system for the short term, and then, for example, when you are growing, I've seen this happen all the time with organizations who will prioritize either money or speed upfront, only to later realize that when they have a new company, for example, or a new warehouse, or they need to pivot a business model, then the cost of implementing that is significantly higher than if they try to future-proof that implementation or configuration right up front. And this is really why you sort of hard code today's constraints, and then you have to pay something like a change tax later. So the cost of trying to scale the business after that initial implementation becomes so much more difficult than if you had tried to sort of build a more scalable approach right from the start. And one of the examples is really sort of taking a multi-entity approach. This is something that I see with my customers all the time. Is they are growing quite fast. They want to grow through opening up new entities and market expansion, and they really ought to ensure the system scales for that. We've implemented things like global template configurations for organizations that have multiple entities, even sometimes across multiple countries as well. And that's all the work that needs to be done upfront. Otherwise, you run into a lot of issues related to just spending so much more money trying to make it scalable after the fact.
Yeah, and I think,
Yeah, I was just going to, kind of chime in there for the process of adding international environments. If you're not really thinking about that up front and thinking, oh, we'll just do that later, those are the kinds of things that you really need to just really get all of that out front for the entire requirement process, so that you're not surprised later to find out, oh, that doesn't work the way they were thinking. So I think that's really one of the many areas of making sure that you've got all of your priorities and what's to come long term figured out early on.
And I mean, it goes beyond just picking an ERP and thinking about your ERP. I think when you're in the mindset of picking a new system, it's an opportunity also to look at the broader, your broader tech stack and leveraging an ecosystem and what works with your ERP. So Tina, how should companies look at, an ERP system like Business Central and F&O beyond just being an ERP system? What's the value that comes with a Microsoft solution and the Microsoft stack? And it's a very vast and broad ecosystem. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
It is. Think about Microsoft Dynamics 365 as a complete platform. It's not just an ERP. It used to be ERP just meant, oh, we're just dealing with your accounting types of processes. No, an ERP and the platform goes from your accounting, but also Power BI for your advanced analytics, Power Automate for workflow automation, Microsoft Office to integrate all of your office processes, Teams integration for collaboration within your organization. You've got Azure AI, Copilot for predictive insights. This ecosystem turns an ERP into a digital transformation hub, not just a transactional system. So there's seamless communication going on throughout, in and out of your ERP solution that you choose.
That's absolutely right, Tina. I think the way folks are operating is changing significantly, even with the AI age that we are starting to live in. Is you want to move away from transactional systems, not move away, but you want to get the transaction into the systems much faster and really get the insights out of it, which is really the end goal with almost any system implementations. You want to be able to make decisions faster and get those insights out. And AI, for example, is changing the way that happens in terms of data entry, but also how employees and staff get the information at the right time in the best way, right? And so many use cases around Microsoft Copilot, and that's again tying back to the long-term strategy. AI is only as good as the data you have, and that's something that Microsoft's doing a little bit uniquely in tying all of these systems together and building that interoperability that then helps you set a data foundation that makes your AI so much better.
Yeah, and it's all moving very quickly.
Indeed.
It is. So we are actually nearing the end of our session today, and we've covered a lot from choosing the right fit, future-proofing your business. But before we wrap up today, I want to leave our audience with some tips from you both. So Alfred and Tina, what's one piece of advice you would give the audience as they continue their journey? Maybe Alfred, can you answer first?
I think the one thing that I'm really passionate about guiding customers is think long term, choose a platform and not a product. The net effects of thinking this way far exceed that short-term thinking of let's solve a certain problem today. You want a solution that gives you the highest level of intensity when it comes to automation and really bridging the gaps between siloed departments. And the only way you really do that for the long term is thinking platform versus product, is thinking about solutions that integrate with each other out of the box, so you can help productivity and reduce the time it takes to enter data between departments, but also sets you up for really powerful reporting analytics and really helps you make those decisions at the end of the day. So I would say choose a platform, not a product, and think long term.
That's great. And Tina, what's one piece of advice you would leave the audience with today?
Well, as the strategic partner and alliance manager here at Encore, and partners being my focus, I would say it is so important to choose the right partner for the long haul. Making sure that you've really connected and done the work that needs to be done along with your partner to make sure that you're getting the information that you need to make those long-term decisions. And there are plenty of partners across North America. But the ones that have deeper knowledge and proven experience give you a much better chance of success. And, you know, it's not just about getting started. Let's get an ERP solution or change our ERP solution. It's really about making sure your ERP and digital transformation stays on track for years to come.
That's great. So thank you both. We are at time, but if anybody does have any questions, if you enter them into the question panel, we can get back to you later today. And I'm going to go ahead and add a few links into our chat box there. So I just added one to our Encore events page. We have lots of upcoming sessions and we'll be scheduling shortly for the new year. So be sure to keep up with that. I'm also going to add where you can subscribe and set your email preferences to opt into our emails so that you can stay in the know about those upcoming sessions. We also have lots of great blog articles and other resources that we share through those emails. So a big thank you to Tina and Alfred today for the information and for everyone joining us today.
Thank you so much, Katie.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, you too. Thanks, Alfred.
Thanks.